All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Street Improvement Permits and the Seattle Services Portal overview today. My name is Melody Berry. I work in street use, do lots of things, including Accela. Today we have lots to talk about, so I'm going ahead and get going here. We'll go over our Accela launch overview. We have one more external workshop after this, and then we have a bunch of Q&A drop-in sessions after launch. Today, we're going to go over a quick overview of the final plat permit type, and then we'll get into the bones of what SIP looks like in the portal, how to apply for a SIP in the portal, and then just some general knowledge of how to find the status of a permit and what that looks like at the different steps of the SIP permit, how to pay fees, how to schedule a pre-con meeting, how to respond to corrections and find documents. We'll do an inspections overview and how to schedule an inspection, and then we'll go over how to get help after lunch. Okay, so this is a long project for us. We are replacing Hansen. Really what we're trying to do with our Accela launch is really improve the transparency and predictability of our permit process. Definitely have a lot of automatic functionality that requires us to do a lot of manual data entry today. And we also have very good opportunities to integrate our permit process systems with other departments. I won't be talking about that today, but we have a couple really cool SDCI integrations as part of our launch. Okay, so this is SDOT's last and biggest launch into Accela. We already have our traffic, public space management, and our annual vehicle permits in the portal, but this will take care of the rest of street use permits. So these are all the permit types that we're launching in a little over a week. Today we're talking about final plat and street improvement permits. There's some critical cutoff dates, system and service cutoff dates. Today is the last day to get any of your email requests in for new applications or modifications. That cutoff is 5 p.m. tonight. So if you're about to submit something, please do it today by 5 p.m. Otherwise, we are going to ask you to go to the portal come November 9th. On Wednesday, we'll no longer be accepting any new applications in Hansen through our online web form. And we're also cutting off any job start requests or off-hour work requests at 5 p.m. on Wednesday. And then Friday is the last time that anyone will be able to access Hansen externally. We are allowing payments until 3 p.m. on Friday, and then that online web form goes down altogether. Please also note that, does someone have a question?
Melody, I just want to point out before anybody freaks out that job start and off-hour requests cut off at 5 p.m. on Wednesday does not mean that people are not allowed to work overtime the weekend of the 6th or the 7th and 8th. It just means that those aspects of the system will not be connected anymore that way. So,
good point. Thanks, Chris. And if you're an existing Accela user, our big launch is taking down Accela this weekend and the weekend of November 7th. Sorry. So November 9th, that brings us to our official launch day. That's when you guys will be able to go into the portal and access these permit types or any existing permits that were converted over. Street use is closed for normal business on the 9th and the 10th, but our Accela phone line and email are available if you need help we're really just focusing that effort on getting you access to your converted permits, more so than how to utilize the system. Holiday on Wednesday will come back all fresh and open for normal business. And then also those integration permits I was just talking about for side sewer and curb cuts, that integration goes into production on the 12th. Okay, so here we are. We are on our street improvement permit overview. We have amendment types next week, and then general Q&As. These actually extended past all the way into December. That information is coming out in our newsletter and will be posted on our Accela updates website as well. If you were not able to attend any of our previous workshops, the recordings and the PowerPoint presentations can be found on this website as well. All right, so let's just hop on into it here. Final plat, this is SDOT process for subdivisions. We only do a few of these a year. It's a big, long council process, but it's used to facilitate the final plat process for new full subdivisions. It uses the full workflow, and these records bypass issuance and go directly to closed. The record ID for these is SDOT plat. There's a whole bunch of required documents required for these. I'm not going to go into it specifically. This is a well-documented process. But these are the steps in Accela. So again, after we're done with facilitating the process, it just goes to close. We don't issue these permits. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about final plat, but I at least wanted to get it out there. Now let's go into SIP. This is the big guy. This is the one everyone wants to know about. Street improvement permit and use types. Street improvement permits are used to permit improvements to the streetscape required by the land use code or related codes or voluntarily. We have a specific workflow and permit steps for this permit. It's called the SIP workflow. It is much different. Well, functionality is not much different, but it looks different than the full workflow. It does have amendments attached to it, and this is a big paradigm shift for SIP permit holders. We will ask you to update dates or use amendments to update scopes of work after permit issuance. The record ID, this is my favorite of the whole thing, is SUSIP. I mean, it just does not get any better than that, you guys. Okay, some other changes that we're going to go over today is we now have kind of 3 different use types you can use under this permit type. SIP is just the normal commercial/residential construction that we all know and love today. SIP Lite is something we've been working on for a very long time, and thanks to everyone's hard work, we finally have that going. That is a shortened version of the SIP process for smaller scale improvement projects, and then also when ADA ramps are required through development work. And then SIP public main, that's a pretty big shift for us. We historically have permitted those under utility major permits, but now they will be under a SIP permit. So if you're doing any work with storm, sewer, or water mains, it'll now be under a SIP permit using the SIP public main use type. Okay, this is kind of the high-level permit steps of the SIP workflow. We have application. Conceptual review is what we're calling our 30% review phase. Design review is what we're calling our 60% review phase. And then we have formal review for 90%. That's the same terminology we use today. Please note that we have pre-con review up here that can go in parallel with formal review. They're not necessarily tied to each other, but they can be done at the same time. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but pre-con review will always be done before issuance for the majority of SIP permits. All right, so how, just kind of give you guys some insight about how our Accela record IDs are. I'll be using record and permit interchangeably. Don't mind me. Accela is the name. They name everything record because there's more than just permits available in Accela. So SUSIP is your record type, and then the number string is after that. So we have SUSIP and then s.plat for these permits.
Hey, Melody, there's a question on the table.
Yep, I'm reading it. Thanks, Tina. The SIP public main, Andrew, is only used for public main work. So there has to be a sewer, water, storm, main. If it's any other type of utility, it's either under a minor utility or utility major permit. Mains, mainly mains. Okay, let's talk about conceptual review. Again, this is our 30% review phase. Hey, you guys, sorry, I have somebody here and my husband's not here. Just give me 1 second, I apologize. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, again, 30% review. That'll be the first step of the SIP workflow after application. The required documents at application is the 30% SIP plans. And if the applicant or financially responsible party is different than the owner, then it's also going to ask you to submit a letter of authorization. Once you get into conceptual review screening, optional documents could be the preliminary assessment report or the SIP Lite eligibility form, but that's something that the reviewer will determine. So the conceptual review phase is led by our development review group, led by Jonathan Williams. This is the phase that they'll do the SDCI coordination on land use code requirements, design review, process and departures, and street improvement exceptions. They also do early coordination with outside SDOT divisions and SPU solid waste. And we ensure that the 30% conceptual plan follows early guidance and coordination code requirements and standards. The reviewer in this phase will also determine what SIP use type is best suited for the work. And so you can't actually apply for a SIP Lite permit. The development reviewer will determine if you meet the SIP Lite permit. All right, Tanya, I see your question. Hi, Tanya. So Tanya, the SIP public main is the same thing as any SPU main requirements. It's just we're moving it from the utility major permit to the SIP public main permit. And we can talk offline about that as well. We're really just moving where that work occurs, what permit type. Okay, so speaking of SIP Lite, let's talk about what triggers a SIP Lite permit. If your project meets any of the below criteria, it will be reviewed as a SIP Lite permit. New or revised curb ramps required by the land use code or during construction of a development project. So just a reminder, if it's a utility permit or utility work that's triggering the curb ramps, that's going to be done under utility major permit. Combination of new or revised curb ramps required by the land use code or during construction of development project plus any associated pedestrian improvements as long as it's less than 2,000 square feet. Street improvements, whether it's triggered by the land use code or voluntary, less than 2,000 square feet, and small scale alley improvements less than 2,000 square feet. So really anything on more than 2,000 square feet is going to go into that larger SIP process. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but the big advantage of SIP Lite is it bypasses 60% review. So it bypasses the design review phase. But if you're in a SIP public main or the big SIP use type, you will have to go through design review. So kind of how the SIP workflow works is, you're kind of at a new quote unquote application spot when we're moving through these different phases. So at this point in time, your conceptual review has been completed. You're now starting design review, but we can't actually start design review until you submit the required documents. Tina, feel free to chime in here. Right, and so once we complete conceptual review evaluation, you will get notice that you need to go to the portal and something's required. And these are the required documents at design review. So the project scope and details form, base map checklist, survey checklist, survey base map, 60% complete SIP checklist, 60% SIP plans. And if, obviously, if you're on the full SIP, the on-site stormwater calculator. We also have optional documents that may also be required at design review, depending on what you're doing. Comprehensive drainage report, geotechnical report, street lighting calculations, structural calculation, the water availability certificate, or the water main contract sign. So on our website, we'll have information about when those documents are required to some degree. If you know that that's going to be required, feel free to upload it at the same time you're uploading the required documents. Otherwise, the SIP PM is going to come back and ask you for that information. Okay, so the design review phase is only again required for the SIP and SIP public main use types and is led by the SIP project manager. So this is the official handoff from development review to the SIP PM. This phase involves a design guidance meeting, 60% SIP plans approval, and approval for the STCI building intake, if applicable. Okay, so once you're done with the design review, you're now in the formal review. This is required for all SIP use types. And again, once we get to this step, in order for us to start formal review, you have to submit the required documents, which are 90% complete SIP checklist. If it's a SIP Lite, then you would use the 90% complete SIP Lite checklist, and then the 90% SIP plans. Again, optional documents that the SIP PM could ask for, or if you already know they're required, go ahead and upload it. Design Commission recommendation, EIS, Seattle Fire Marshal permit, SEPA checklist, ADA MEF form. If you can't meet the requirements of the curb ramp, you'll need to update that. Letter of intent for easements, and 100% approved plans, which will come later. Okay, so formal review is really just where the SIP PM facilitates the approval of the SIP plans. And then also, if a bond is required, they'll set that up during the formal review phase as well. Okay, so just a reminder that the pre-con review for the majority of SIP permits will be done before issuance and can be started at any time, and can be in parallel with the formal review phase. So again, for us to start the pre-con review, you'll need to submit the right-of-way impact plan. That's the old work zone phase plan, whatever we called that. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Tina. This just a reminder that this is just the pre-con review, not the pre-con meeting. Phase schedule manager, and we have a new, this is replacing the project schedule. And if you work on utility major permits, you're aware of this document. We have a new fillable PDF version of the phase schedule manager on our website. That'll be coming out in our newsletter today. Pre-construction material submittal form and RAMS forms. If this is also where we'll ask for the traffic control plan. If you have that already, please submit everything all at once. Okay, Liz asks, are Mylar still required at 100%? Yes, but we have an electronic Mylar system now, Liz. I'm not going to go into that today, but technically, yes, it just looks a little different today. Okay, so the pre-con review phase is led by the SIP PM. It'll include construction impacts and schedule review, materials review and approval. This will be the handoff from the SIP PM to the SIP inspector. And once we're done with both formal review and pre-con review, we'll go into the issuance prep phase. Before we go there, I want to talk about other documents I didn't necessarily list up above. This is just really for every street use permit. Payment moratorium waiver would be requested if you're digging into a new street per our right-of-way opening restoration rules. We will ask for that at the conceptual review phase of the permit, if that's a requirement. The holiday construction moratorium waiver will be requested at formal review if you're planning on doing construction during the holiday moratorium. A new thing associated with all street use permits for this phase, for this launch anyway, is if you're impacting paid parking, we want some sort of proof that you've applied for our temporary no parking confirmation permit. Most of the time, the street use reviewer will just search and verify this, but if you haven't already applied for your paid parking permit, we may be asking you for that information. Usually with SIPs, that's pretty much already taken care of by the time you get to the SIP. Historic district certificate of approval. If you're in a historic or landmark district, that may be required. Bond and the amount determined in formal review. That's due at issuance prep. We'll talk about that in a second. If a certificate of insurance is required, it'll be due at issuance prep, as well as an indemnity agreement. I also walk you guys through how to respond to a correction cycle, but we can request corrections at any of the review phases, 30, 60, 90, and even pre-con. Okay, so these are the permit steps in the portal for you to submit an application. This is taking the place of our current fillable PDF application. You'll be uploading all the information into the portal to start the permit process. If you've been at any of our other workshops, there's one step missing for SIP, and that is the use information. We are not asking you to enter that for your application. Okay, so the process steps are select permit type, enter project address, add contacts, enter project and location description, enter related information, upload required documents, review application information, and then submit. And then you get a thank you confirmation. Okay. In order for you to be able to apply for a permit, you have to have a portal, Seattle Services portal login account. I'm going to say if you don't already have an account, please see our Seattle Services portal overview recording and PowerPoint presentation. We also have a lot of great help articles on this, especially as it relates to how do you get access to your converted permits. So once you log in, then you can start your application. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do when you're logged in versus what you can't do. So if you're logged in with a portal account and you're a permit contact or a delegate of a permit contact, you can apply for applications, withdraw an application, view and upload documents, respond to corrections, make changes to an issued permit, and assign delegates. If you're not logged in and not a permit contact or delegate, the only thing you'll be able to do is search for permits, view permit information, accept documents, make payments, and schedule an inspection. If you're interested in understanding and learning more about delegates, we have a lot of great help articles in the Help Center on the State Services portal under the Managing Your Account section. I'm not going to go into that detail today, but this is all really good information. Okay, so once you're logged in, you'll go to this Create New section here, click on the you're going to find the SDOT Final Plat and Street Improvement Permit under the Major Street Improvements section. Just a reminder that the Utility Major Permit is going to be found in the Utility section. We have links to our websites here in the help text, and for Final Plat, the process is documented under this tip. All right, so feel free to go back to the website to make sure you know what permit type you're actually asking for. Of course, it's just a SIP, so it's pretty clear, I think, on this one. So once you've selected the permit type you want, click Continue Application. Here's just a kind of overview of what the application page looks like. This will indicate what page you're on, or step 1 here. These are the next steps coming up, and any field that has an asterisk is a required field, right? And as you're moving along the pages or steps, you can tell which ones you've already completed and then which one you're on. You can save at any point of your application process and resume later. And if you want to move to the next step, you just use this Continue Application button. Okay, so the first step is entering your address. You have to search for your address pretty much in Excel, and it says exact match. So you'll enter all the required fields here, click Search. If it's not an exact match, a pop-up window will show up here. Find the address you want, click on it, and then click on the Select button. Just a note here that if it's a number street, just use the number, don't use anything that comes after it. Okay, once you have your street, click the Continue Application button. Okay, Contacts Overview. The next step is Contacts. For all street use permits, we have 4 required contacts. The applicant, that's the individual applying for the permit. The owner, that's the property, business, or asset infrastructure owner. I know that gets a little confusing on our permits, but that can be the developer or the engineering firm hired by the developer. Financially responsible party is the organization responsible for paying all related fees and charges. The on-site contact is who street use would call if we need something responded to quickly on-site. So kind of how adding the applicants works on the portal is you have these 3 buttons here. Select from account will auto-populate the contact associated with the login account. So if you're the applicant, you can click on that and it'll auto-populate you as the applicant. Add new, you can add a new contact if it's needed, but I'm going to say do this cautiously. We don't want to create duplicate contacts in the portal. So please always look up and try to find an existing contact before we ever create a new contact. Once you've added at least one contact, you can use this same as option to add that contact down the page. So if the owner is the same as the applicant, you would select this and just say, it's the applicant, doink, and then it'll populate as the applicant. And you can do that all the way down. And then we also have these additional contacts available. Just note that authorized agent and contact receive all permit correspondence. So if you don't want to receive all permit correspondence, don't add yourself as one of these. Okay, so again, you're on the contacts page at step 2. You have to add in all 4 required contacts. And then if you want to add additional contacts, you can do it here. Once you're done, click Continue Application. Okay, so the next page or step is project information. This is where you'll enter your project name and your project and location description. Please note that we do have an example of what we're looking for in the project and location description in the help text up here. Next, we get to related information. This is where you can put your related SDCI numbers or SDOT permit numbers. We have 2 open fields here you can use to help reference your project outside of the street use permit. We also have project name up here. If it was like a CSO project or something, that would be helpful to put in this field. This first customer reference field does print on the invoice to help track your projects. The 24-hour contact name defaults from the applicant. You can change that as needed. The restoration party defaults as the owner. And then if applicable, we have these land use code vesting date and SDCI building intake appointment fields that are very important to the SIP process. And if you have an easement situation going on with your SIP project, it'll be super helpful for you to enter that information in this easement detail free text box. Okay, next is uploading documents. And again, the required documents for SIP is the 30% SIP plans. We will also ask you for a letter of authorization if the applicant or financially responsible party is different from the owner. So to upload a document, you're going to click on this select button, and then that's going to pop up the this new window for you to select the document from your computer. So download your 30% plans from your computer. And then at this point in time, you're going to need to tell Accela what document type this is. And I'm just going to pause here for a second. So Accela's way of asking for documents is through a condition. And in order for Accela to know that you're satisfying that condition, is that the document type meets the document type required per that condition name, right? So we are requiring the 30% SIP plans. If you selected a different document type here, it's not going to satisfy the condition and you're not going to be able to apply for your permit. So just make sure that this document type, it meets the requirement of the condition that will allow you to apply for the permit. Hope that makes sense. So when you click on this drop-down menu, you're going to have a bunch of available document types. If you accidentally select 60% SIP plans, Accela is going to be like, wait a minute, that's not what required. You can upload the 60% plans, but you're not going to be able to submit your permit until you tell Accela you uploaded 30% SIP plans. I also want to make note that we also have a really cool Bluebeam integration with Accela, but it doesn't work unless you upload PDF documents. So please, please, please only upload PDF documents. Okay, Wade, that's a really good question. You asked, how do you submit plans that have already been initiated through email prior to launch? So Accela, there's a lot of manual stuff we have to do with converted permits. So if you've already submitted via email, don't worry about it. We're still processing those requests. When we get to that permit, we will get the Accela converted permit set up to match where you're at. And then Accela would prompt you if we need something out after that. Okay, so you just uploaded your 30% SIP plans. And this is, I kind of want to point out that when I talk about conditions and documents and how those two things have to match, if you, for instance, upload something other than 30% SIP plans, you're going to get this red banner up here, and it's going to tell you something else is needed. For this particular example, it's a letter of authorization. So in order for you to submit your application, you now have to go back and upload the letter of authorization, click the letter of authorization document type, and then come back and submit your application. Once you've submitted all requirements, all document requirements that met all the conditions, this banner turns green. Okay, so once you're done that, please go back and do a quick QA of your application. You can tab back to all the different steps and pages. If you need to edit anything, just click on the edit button and change whatever you need changed. Once you're done with that, you can come back and click on the Terms and Agreement checkbox here. The terms and agreements are listed up above that box. And then click on Continue Application. This is going to come back with a thank you email saying you have successfully applied for SIP, blah, blah, blah. You can open your permit by clicking on the blue hyperlink. If there are additional documents required later in the permit process, it's going to show down here. This is just an example. Okay, now we're going to kind of go into how to find the status of your permit. The SIP process is long, so if you're just not sure where you're at, you can find the status of your permit in two different ways, either through the My Records page, and you can either tell it that you just want your street use permits shown or all permits shown in this My Records overview. Or you can search for an individual permit by using the Find Existing option. Okay, so from the My Records page, you're going to find the status of your permit in the status column, right? So you see here that this particular SIP requires a document, right? So that's going to make you think, oh, something's required at this point. You may also see initiated if you just applied for it, issued if it's issued, waiting for payment. Those are other statuses you'll see. Corrections required, it's another one. From the individual permit, this is where you're going to get a lot more information than just the record status. You'll click on the status tab here. Anything with a green check mark means it's completed. Anything with an hourglass means it's in process. You can expand any of these tasks at any time to kind of see, you know, what the status is, what the due date is. The next task coming up will be shown down here. Anything that's not started will be shown down here. Okay, so I'm just going to go through what this looks like for each phase of the SIP process because it gets pretty complicated. So for design review, this is also where we'll require a design guidance meeting. So once the conceptual review task is shown as complete and it now has a green check, the design review will show as in process. Once all the required documents are uploaded for the design review task, that's when our part of it starts. It'll change the record status from awaiting documents to documents submitted. So once we're done with conceptual review, it'll be sitting in design review with a record status of awaiting documents until you submit all those required documents. If the SIP PM determines a design guidance meeting is required, the record status will change from documents submitted to design guidance meeting required. Now, scheduling the design guidance meeting all happens offline of Accela, but once the meeting is scheduled, the record status is going to change to a waiting design guidance meeting, and the meeting date is also going to be referenced. Okay, so that's kind of what you can expect from design review. Again, once we're done, we'll go into the formal review part of it. This is what formal review will look like. There's a green check next to design review. Again, formal review will show as in process. Once you submit documents, all the required documents for formal review, the record status will change from awaiting documents to documents submitted. I also want to give an example of what corrections would look like. And again, corrections can happen at any phase of the SIP permit. So if we are asking for corrections, the record status is going to change to awaiting corrections. And once you submit all the required documents for that corrections, the record status will change to corrections submitted. Okay, and then pre-con review is very similar to formal review. Actually, it's pretty much the same. And please note that you could have formal review going on at the same time as pre-con review, right? And so you just have to expand each one of these to see what's really going on. Then we get to issuance prep. Issuance prep is the task that will finalize the bond and indemnity agreements and certificate of insurance if that's required. So this will most likely always just show as in process if it's not completed. If we do need additional information in issuance prep, we can go back out for our corrections required as well. So issuance prep is the step before issuance. But before issuance, there'll be fees due, and this is how you pay your fees. There's two ways you can go about it. You can either do it from your My Records page. The status will show as waiting for payment. And you just click on this Pay Fees Due link here. If you wanted to do it from the individual permit, you just go to the Fees page tab, and then click the Pay Fees link here. Either way will get you to the same place. A note is we do not accept partial payments. So if you click on that and you're like, whoa, I can't pay that right now, you're just going to have to exit out of it and come back. Mike asks, are fees typically due immediately after uploading documents to start the next SIP review phase? No, Mike, we collect it at the end of the review phase. So it's going to be after issuance prep, before issuance. Now, I'm talking about like fees that are due before issuance. You'll have invoiced fees along the way, but we don't require you to pay those invoice fees before moving to the next step. I'll talk about invoice fees in a second. I'm just talking about the issuance fee due before we issue the permit. So if you're ready to pay your fees, click on the checkout button. Now, Accela has a cart. You can pay for different permits in the same cart. So if you wanted to edit your cart to take away fees from a different permit, you can do that. Otherwise, you would just click the checkout button. So once you're ready to pay, and it's only credit card over through the portal, if you need to pay by check, you just do that through our normal process as we do today. So you'll enter your credit card information up here. If the billing information down here is the same as the contact information associated with the portal account you're logged in with, you can click this box. But just a reminder, you don't have to be logged in to pay fees. Otherwise, you have to fill out all this information manually and then click Submit Payment. That's going to give you a thank you confirmation. And if you want to print or view your receipt, just click this button. And this is kind of what our receipt looks like today. So once you paid for those fees that are due before issuance, Accela will automatically issue your permit. Okay, so let's get into pre-con meetings. They're going to look a little differently than they do today. So just some process change highlights around pre-cons. Most projects will complete the pre-con review process prior to permit issuance, and all pre-con meetings will be held after permit issuance. So to request a pre-con meeting, all you need to do is email your SIP PM after the permit's been issued. We'll schedule the meeting offline of Accela and invite the SIP inspector and any applicable city inspectors to the meeting. All inspection requests will happen through the portal, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. And the SIP inspector will be your main point of contact after that. Right now, we are holding these through MS Teams or WebEx for the most part. Okay, so let's talk about how to respond to corrections. So just a reminder that corrections can be requested at any review screening or review evaluation step, right? If we're asking for it at review evaluation, we're coming back and starting at screening because that's the beginning of our review phase. So once we ask for corrections, your record status will change from in process to awaiting corrections. And it'll look like this, awaiting corrections. You can open the permit by clicking on the blue hyperlink permit number. So to find out the red, yellowish, orangish banner here will tell you what documents are required. If you want to learn more about what those documents are, click on this view condition. You'll notice that if there had been at least one correction cycle requested, the review evaluation task is going to show an asterisk. And then it's going to show you at screening, right? I just showed you that graphically, that, you know, if we're asking for corrections at review evaluation, we're coming back to screening because that's the start of our review phase. And we have named the condition/document type for our street use comment sheet corrections. And if we're asking you to submit corrections response document, really what that is the street use comment sheet with your responses added. So if a corrections response condition is required, you just need to submit the street use comment sheet with your responses and then tell Accela that that is the corrections response document. So before you can do that though, you need the street use comment sheet, which we're calling the corrections document. So to get that, to download that to your computer, from the individual permit, click on attachments and then scroll until you find the corrections document with the most current date. Just click on that and download it to your computer. Once you have your responses in it and all revised documents ready to go, you can then upload all those documents in the attachments tab here by following the same process as you did with the application. Just a reminder, please only upload PDF documents. So once you're done uploading all your required documents, you can then click Save here. If you want to add another document, click on Select here. Just keep doing that until you have everything uploaded. All right, so once you upload all required documents, the record status will now show as corrections submitted.
Hey, Melody.
Yeah.
If I could.
Yes.
This is similar to the application where you want to make sure that the document type that you choose when you upload it actually matches the condition that was in that red banner, or that's when you click on View Conditions. If you if after you're done uploading your documents and your record status is still awaiting corrections, that means that there's still a condition that Accela thinks you need to fulfill, and it's still waiting for another document before anybody's going to get a chance to look at your stuff.
Yeah. So if you go back and you still have this yellow, orangish, reddish banner here, that means you still have to upload the right-of-way impact plan before it can move from awaiting corrections to corrections submitted. Thanks, Tina. Okay. So I said this at the top, but we do have amendments available on the SIP record now. We are going to ask that you guys extend your dates if you go past the original time frame. We are going to ask that if you have a revision, a scope of work change, that you go through an amendment on a SIP. I know that's a little different than how we do business today. So to do that, you'll go either to your My Records page or the individual permit, and you'll click the Make Changes link or button. That's going to send you to this window here. We have a date change, extension, or revision amendment available for these. I'll talk about amendments in our workshop next week. I do want to highlight that for some special types of projects, you can use the revision amendment to also start your pre-con review phase. These are really for really special projects, though. You can also use the revision amendment to make contact changes, address changes, scope of work changes, or if you need to cancel your permit. The extension amendment is just to extend your dates. Your date change amendment is just to move your start date up or backward. So once you select the type of amendment you want, click Continue Application. All right. We also have a new withdrawal option. So if you initiated an application and then you realize, oh, I submitted that error, it really needs to be an UMP or something, as long as we haven't started processing it, you can withdraw your application. So all you would do is go to this Make Changes, select Right-of-Way Withdrawal, and click Continue Application. And that's going to take that away from our queue. Okay, I'm going to inspections now. I've talked about this a bunch already, so I'm going to kind of just lightly talk about it here. SIP has most of the inspection types except acceptance. Just note that we have aligned our inspection types to kind of mirror and be consistent across all permit types. So the final inspection indicates all work is complete, the right-of-way is clear, and all infrastructure is properly installed. So we used to call this acceptance, but this will be called final in Accela. The bond release inspection indicates the asset has been accepted and restoration is functioning without defect after the 12-month warranty period. So that's how the end of the SIP process is going to work. Notifications, this is your way of scheduling an inspection either through the portal or through street use processes. So the SIP has the job start, site restoration, and curb ramp notifications and mark out in the portal. And then I'll talk about off hours and pre-con. So off hours and pre-con are the only inspection types you can't schedule in the portal. Off hours is the same process as today. If you're working outside normal working hours, you need to give us 3 business days advance notice and email this email address here. We've already talked about pre-con meetings for SIPs. You just email the SIP PM after permit issuance. So for the notifications that are available in the portal, to schedule an inspection from the individual permit, click on the Inspections tab. Under Actions, click Schedule. And just a reminder that you do not have to be logged in to schedule an inspection. That's going to take you to request a date that you want to start your job. The available time is really based on your start date and duration. Click Continue after you select your date. Next, you need to tell us who your on-site contact is. That's the person that the inspector is going to be working with. If it's not the applicant information that auto-populates here, click Change Contact and then enter the contact information you want us to use. Once you're done with that, click Submit. Lukey, I knew that was you.
Pretty please. Again, when we're talking about scheduling an inspection, this is the person that we need to be able to talk to in the field. It can be different every time if you want, but we need to know who we're talking to on that site for this event. So please make sure you update that so that we can communicate with your field staff effectively and efficiently.
Thanks, Chris. So once you're done telling us who you want us to contact for inspections, you can optionally add details here for the inspector, like if you need to tell them what time of day you want to meet, what you're doing, that'll be really helpful. And then click the Finish button here. You can also reschedule, which is really cool. As long as you're giving us 2 business days notice, you can come back and say, whoops, something happened. I need to push my dates out a little further. So to do that, you're on the Inspections tab. Under Actions, click Reschedule. Right? Then you just follow the same steps. Okay, we're in the How to Get Help After Launch section of this presentation. I just really want to highlight that the kind of biggest thing that we're going to be working on after launch in our services to you is getting you access to your converted permits, which is way too complicated for me to go into in this presentation. If you just have process questions, please just go to our website and go to our Help Center articles to find your answers there. We really just need the first 2+ weeks to really just, get everyone's contact and portal accounts aligned with their existing permits. So we will have a new SIP Lite webpage just before launch. If you go to any of our web pages, there's also going to be a link to the Seattle Services portal on the right panel. We are updating all our websites to support R2, so you'll find a lot of really good information on our websites. In addition, we have a lot of great help articles in the Help Center on the Seattle Services portal. We even have our own section, Permit/Street Use. So please go to these places first before you call or email us. And again, we have all our recordings of our previous workshops, and we have a bunch of Q&A sessions lined up for you guys. Again, that will come out in the newsletter going out today, and that information will be on our Accela Updates website next week. Okay. All right, you guys. So that's the end of this. My name is Melody Berry. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me. Liz, yes, this presentation and this recording will be on that Accela updates website next week. Lily, you asked, will public main adjustments currently being reviewed under the UMP process be grandfathered into the UMP process? Yes. Yes, it will. Okay, you guys, thank you for your time. Have a great weekend and happy Halloween.